Welcome to the Java Cafe, Java fam. Good morning.
It's definitely not morning. Okay, so I'm going to have to get an updated and you should see these people. They're laughing at me in the background. It is definitely not morning. It is 8 p.m. and welcome to a long requested. And it's funny because everybody was requesting it and I don't see y'all in the room yet, but I'm not going to be shady. Do me a favor for the 5 of you that are in here right now, hit share. But we are coming to you tonight to talk for the third time. I was in the kitchen earlier and I actually said to myself, the third annual, and I'm like, wow, it's been 3 years. We did this in 2020, going into Morley with those that were going to run for office in 2021. And we did it last year, I believe, around more commentary. Everyone except Shakira has been in the Java Cafe in sort of a political pundit or commentator, political analyst sort of stance. And so I am honored this evening to have these folks in the room with me who, from former elected candidates to advocates, all of them are advocates. One classifies or describes himself as a electoral, electoral something. Anthony, you can tell me later. But listen, without further ado, I would like you all to welcome into the room. And again, please hit the share button and invite someone to be a part of this. Shout out to those from Boston While Black that will be tuning in. We let them know that this will be a good dose of local politics for those that are new to Boston. So we're going to bring in our guest and we're going to introduce them in a couple of minutes. And Shakira, if you're there, I'm about to bring you on camera, but I don't want to bring you on unless you're ready. And as soon as you're ready, I'll see. And there she go. I see the mic come off. And then turn your camera on and we'll be good. So good evening, people.
Hey.
How you doing?
Good evening.
Hey, y'all.
What's up, Anthony? Anthony, what you in the car? No, I'm messing.
You can make me do. Yeah, I'm in my car right now.
I'm messing.
That'd be such an immersive background if he wasn't actually in a car. I would be like, wow, skills.
I mean, virtual background, yeah.
That would be. I mean, the choice for that dope background would be interesting. But this is going to be very interesting tonight. So let's start with.
Yeah, Kristen's starting it off. Usually she's not using with the
no.
Jabs.
Kristen is ready. Kristen, you haven't been on Java with Jimmy in a political commentator position in a while.
Yeah.
So you have a whole bunch of Kristen to share with us this evening to catch up, and it's been a whole year that you'll be able to give us some thoughts on. So actually, Kristen, let's start with you. Give us a brief introduction, and I would ask you at the end of your introduction for our icebreaker to describe, and I'll switch back and forth between you all, to describe Boston politics in one word.
Oh man, why didn't you text that earlier today? Because
I know, ain't no way to say nothing about no icebreaker.
No,
I'm sneak an icebreaker in.
No.
I got this.
Okay.
I got it.
I'm ready.
Hey. Hi, my name is Kristen Halbert. You've probably seen me around town either as a super volunteer for some of your favorite progressive women of color candidates and electeds, or also being here on Freestyle Fridays with James. And much love to Donovan Birch, wherever in the world you are right now. I don't even know what country he's in, but he's living his absolute best life. And I do just want to say I miss our other co-host for Fridays.
We do, and definitely. And on Fridays, we can't mention Fridays without talking about Darren Howell, who his first Friday came on and was like, this is going to be every week and we're going to call it Freestyle Fridays. So Carlos, I don't know if you knew, but that's where Freestyle Fridays came from.
I'm aware. I've been tuned into Java with Jimmy
that's
for
right.
a couple years now. I don't know if you you got to check the
shady.
archives or something like that, but yeah.
Oh, see, so y'all are choosing violence tonight. Hey, Shakira.
We really are. Like, I can't, I'm like, oh man, this hour. Let's see, one word to describe Boston politics right now.
Yes.
Yikes.
Oh, I thought you were saying yikes that you couldn't think of. Oh, okay.
No.
Brother Carlos, introduce yourself. No introduction needed to the Java fam, but introduce yourself for those that will go watch after. Or let me just check Twitter. Check. You know what? I got coffee over here. For some reason, I can't talk tonight.
You nervous?
I'll check a little bit because all of y'all on here and like, you know what I'm saying? It's I do this every day, but there's
You
still.
can see we're all like super Aggie and like he's just like, oh God.
You haven't even really.
I'll be chomping at the bit. I mean, I'm not going to get into my titles or what I do. I'm just here to be the grumpy old man tonight. I mean, I'm not the oldest person on the show tonight, but I am going to be the grumpy old man and speak from my experience of being behind the curtain of being unelected and trying to set some expectations of what could happen if people were doing the things that they could be doing and who's doing the good things, and we'll just break it down from there. I try to be as forthcoming as possible. I haven't consumed any alcohol tonight, so that I'll keep a little bit. That'll keep me a little more calm. But I can't promise you that I'm gonna be on my best behavior. It's Java After Dark.
It's Java After Dark, and we're going to go in and be honest and authentic, respectable, but be very, very real. Shakira, this is your first time in the Java Cafe.
Make him think of a word.
Oh, God.
I already thought of it. I just forgot to say it. My one word.
Because I got to switch back and forth. So yours is mass poly.
Oh.
That's all I got for you. Then is a sound effect.
Yikes for Boston Poly, or whatever you did for Mass Poly. Shakira, how are you?
Shakira, I'm doing
I'm
great.
Sorry.
It's okay. Thank you so much for having me tonight. This is amazing. I'm glad to be here in this space. I do want to specify that I'm here as an advocate, an activist, and a public health advocate, not here in the space of anything to do with Shakira's story, although I am cognizant that in any room I'm Shakira's story, but in this space, many of you know that I've been a part of a lot of political campaigns in terms of volunteering. And so that's what brings me to this space. So I'm grateful to be here. And my one word, I'm going to have to go with patriarchal. Yeah.
Or wait, hold on, because you're Boston Poly. So, and then Anthony, obviously you'll be Mass Poly because we fluctuated. But so is that still applicable to Boston Poly?
Yes, it is.
Really? With the female mayor?
So we've got a female mayor, but in terms of the effects of the power and of these seats that these women, not for just our mayor, our city councils at large, the new senators that we have, we're seeing a lot of male dominance in terms of what the context of the culture of those we've elected should be and how we're being persuaded in terms of how we should view them in their seats of power. And so I'm going to stick with patriarchal because of the misogyny that our mayor and all the other women who have been elected have been faced with throughout our city. So I'm going to stick with that.
Okay.
I thought this was Java.
No. Listen. Because
don't let James throw you off. We here for the.
Listen, listen, with all due respect,
we nodding like we in church in the front pew.
Yes.
Okay,
I was just gonna say I like you, Shakira.
Oh my God! All right, Anthony, please introduce yourself. Shakira, this is going to be you just set a real good tone right there. Anthony, please introduce yourself. No stranger. It's been a while, but please reintroduce yourself and tell us what you do. In the field in this particular. He's the one that has the title of electoral politics. Not operative. What's the word?
Worker. I don't know.
Worker.
Electoral campaign worker.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
No. So yeah.
Champion.
So humble. So humble.
Genius.
Data super whiz, super geek, data guy.
See, I believe all of that stuff, but I can't say it about myself. So I appreciate y'all saying that. Yeah, so I'm Anthony. I have worked on a lot of electoral campaigns over the last 5 years, with kind of a particular focus on field and data operations and whatnot. And I feel like that's given me a pretty good insight in how things work, in terms of where the votes are, where the power is, everything like that. And what mine is mass poly, right?
Yours is Mass Poly. Yep.
That's my word.
Woo, tonight.
Accurate. So accurate.
Tonight.
So descriptive.
Tonight. So, as you all are listening, you heard me fluctuate between the term boss poly and mass poly. And if those of you that are watching now or watching after the fact, it basically is short for Boston politics and Massachusetts politics. And so they gave sort of their opinion or feedback by observation. And so, Kristen, we started with you first. Carlos, I'm going to jump right in with you. And we're going to start, all politics are local. So we're going to start locally. Generally speaking, Carlos, what would you say about Boston City Council for the year 2022? Most diverse. We'll name that. What would you say about the council?
Most diverse, the most women you've seen on the body, the most people of color you've seen on the body. Not connected to what I just said, but also the council as a whole, not very productive on a year, not very collegial. There doesn't seem to be a lot of professionalism in the sense of working together for the common good of the people that they represent. And it seems like it's been more personality than politics. Now, I know the two are always intertwined, but usually, even if I don't like you, if we have a shared goal, it would be nice to see leadership be able to put some of those personal conflicts aside, and be able to progress. Now, with that said, I will say, though, certain shit can't be tolerated. The disrespect of some of the women of color that are sitting on the city council, I haven't seen that kind of disrespect since Jimmy Kelly used to argue with Charles Yancey and them. So, and Dapper O'Neill and the rest of them. So seeing this come back, I talked to you earlier about going from Trump to Trump to Anissa Asabi George to now what you're seeing on the city council, this wave of misogyny, as Shakira mentioned earlier, the disrespect, the trolling. I'm glad I'm out of the game because I don't have the same stomach I'm glad I got out before Twitter was big and people were making anonymous pages. It's just really, and even seeing stuff like the council president stripping members of their chairmanships without chairpersonships without due cause or due process. There's just been a lot of, this job after dark. There's been a lot of fuckery going on this year, and I think it doesn't help the people. It doesn't build trust with the people. It doesn't engage people. It doesn't make them want to be part of the process, and it weakens the city as a whole.
Got you. Shakira, based on what you said earlier, and Carlos added, highlighted that as well. Is there anything that you would add in reference to Boston politics? And I will say, you all know this, while we're saying Boston politics and we typically think the polls, this is definitely all inclusive of the electeds and everything that comes with. Shakira, you've been on political campaigns, so from campaign managers to fundraisers to, it's all inclusive. So is there anything that you would add in reference to Boston Poly?
When we look at the historical practices of what Boston Poly has been and where we are today, we've struggled and we've.
There go that phone call. We told her that as soon as somebody
she was about to go in too. She went deep with it. I was already like, damn, that's what I should have said.
Can y'all hear me?
All right, word. Okay. Yes.
Good. You good.
Okay.
That ain't nothing but the devil. No, I'm messing.
No, that's my alarm. Keep telling me it's 8:00. It's time to go to bed. But I was speaking to the historical practices in terms of Boston's politics and how we've come to this place of this longevity fight towards racial equity, and now what we're witnessing is this need to fight for the sense of belonging when it comes to women and these seats and how we're represented and respected as such. And so again, we look back at this historical context. This is nothing new. It's just more blatant disrespect. It's more in your face disrespect. It's more loud. It's more common behavior, if you will, because now we have to reciprocate what's being brought to us as women of color in these seats of power and positions. And so at the end of the day, you know, we want to be professionals, but when you hit that glass ceiling so many times, it becomes a thing where we have to react, and you can only do a certain thing or have a certain behavior, but so many times, especially when, as these women who sit in these seats do not have a majority of the folks they're representing to come and support them publicly. Supporting us privately is one thing, but supporting us publicly is another thing. So to say we look angry and we're bitter and we're responding in a way that is not womanizing and you know, coming off as we're put together, or we're, you know, we come with this whole we're under control type of attitude, it needs to be understood that you can only do but so much for so long. And I'm watching the women in these seats try time and time again to save face. Because as women of color, we have been, you know, given this identity, this narrative that we're angry and we're bitter and we come from some place of loss or whatever. But at the end of the day, these are women who have put in the work. And until we begin to respect them for who they are and the work that they put in, not just for us, but for those who are coming, because the reality of it is they're changing the narrative. And there's folks who don't like that, because the truth is, when we know we have to remain sick as a culture, we don't want to do the things that it takes to heal us as a collective. And so I'll leave it there.
Anthony. So let me, because there is going to be, for those of you that, you know, there is going to be a second round, because I know based on what, by the time we get to Kristen, Lord Jesus, Anthony, anything to add to highlight? And I will just name that one of that electoral victories that you had was with Kendra Hicks, now Kendra Laura, but during the campaign, it was Kendra Hicks. And she's been very vocal about some of the things that Shakira points to. So I don't want to guide your comments, but anything to add to what Carlos and Shakira said as well?
I mean, I just first off want to say how much I agreed with them. Like, we've seen unprecedented attacks on largely the women of color on our city council. Obviously, it has not just been limited to the women of color, but it's been really, really pointed at them. And I think that it really, we all know that Boston is
it's after dark. It's after dark, Anthony. Say what you want.
I know. I'm just trying to find the right way to say it. We all know that Boston is a racist city. That it was built on racism. It was built on sexism. It was built on exploiting people, as most cities in the United States were. Now that we've started to see people of color, low-income people, women, LGBTQ folks, all of these different oppressed groups getting power and seeing themselves in elected positions of power, now is when all of the racists are going to start panicking and freaking out and being a lot more aggressive and open about it. So I fully agree with everything that y'all have been saying. These attacks are horrible. I am just disgusted by them constantly, especially, you mentioned I was on Kendra's campaign. Kendra's a good friend of mine, and seeing the attacks she takes every day, just like, it's so terrible. And it's like, we absolutely need to speak out against it, like very, 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 very publicly. And it's like, in a weird way, it's almost making me like hopeful. Like, the reason I know that all of these attacks are starting this year is because we're have our first. Exactly. Right. We have our first woman mayor. We have our first person of color mayor. We have a historic number of women and people of color on the city council. And so all of this shows me that those racist assholes are scared. So
I'm facilitating. Kristen, anything to add, to highlight, to raise, and based on with Carlos, Shakira, and also Anthony said?
Oh, to be in a virtual space with my true people. I love this. This is amazing.
Your digital community.
to lift up, agree with, and signify with everything that has been brought up so far. And you know that I'm a woman of faith. I'm a preacher's daughter. I teach Sunday school. And so in addition to what we've seen against people of color on the council, I definitely want to make sure that we take a moment and pop in on what Counselor Breeden faced to get redistricting over the line. Like, coming, yes, exactly, because we've always been used to Boston being racist as hell, but this divide this year, for them to do that Protestant versus Catholic, knowing that usually the one thing that can undergird almost any work that we are doing is our usual interfaith collaboration.
Yeah.
And then seeing that happen in such a public way, scary. That's scary. That's concerning. But at the same time, we got the redistricting through. At the same time, we are moving forward and we're not going to stop at any point. Oh, why you gonna bring up my brother while I'm talking? Like,
I'm looking more
enough.
Kristen, as you said, you're
only room for one Halbert in here.
And
we got a Halbert in here already.
And I'm a man of faith. I swear to Jesus that I just saw him comment and it didn't correlate until you said it. So Big Brother is in the room. Finish your statement and then I'll go ahead and put David up.
And I just want to say that, we are absolutely in the, death rattles of this like old Boston movement. But the thing is that death rattle has every chance of drowning out some amazing progressive voices if we do not stay on top of it every single second right now. Like, it is game time. It's game time.
This is sort of dope. And Carlos, I want to switch a little bit on this topic where we were going to do a second round. What I would like to do is, Carlos, based on the your three other panelists' comments, and I think that Kristen raised a good point that I seen Shakira get excited, that I saw that there was the invoking of the Catholic Church and things like that, but
we just named that was Counselor Frank Baker, so no one is under any disillusion. It was him that had the nasty attack. And Counselor Breeden responded like a G. So I just wanted to
truly like
parentheses in there.
Carlos, can you respond and then maybe in the response give a little bit of some context? I can do that real quick and maybe respond. The redistricting happened. As Anthony said, white supremacists and folk right here in this city, all politics are local. And again, we know Boston's history. We're scared around the fact that redistricting was changing and there was an opportunity to sort of equalize the districts, and that was not and Tanisha Sullivan, who was running for Secretary of State, who was very active in this, came on and talked about the fact that this was not necessarily a Black thing. It was really true what we call equity in these different districts. And so, Carlos, just a little bit about the redistricting. So based on what you heard in the past few minutes, your response, further thoughts?
So, I want to pick up where Kristen left off. It is a death rattle, right? So I'm very much a strategist. As a former elected, I've run in district races. I do look at them as small wars and battles. Some people might think that's extreme, but that's how I look at it, especially the fight for equity. As the other Halbert mentioned, the more you progress, the more people are going to push against you. It's almost like universal law, right? You push forward, there's going to be a force. So you have to kind of expect that. But also know that when people are in their death rattles, that's when they're the most dangerous. And so while redistricting, this is the second time I've seen it and watched it up close. I've been a part of it 10 years ago. It always moves towards equity, but it's incremental movement. And I still think there's so much more to do about educating the average voter about the importance of it and how it creates equity, how it changes what Boston's representation looks like, and not necessarily to change the seats, but just to give people opportunity, right? That's the goal of it. It's not a white or Black thing. It's really give everybody an equal opportunity, try to make it the voting districts as diverse as possible. But that is a change from the norm. So you mentioned Boston while Black, and a lot of people that might be transplants moving here, you might not know the history of the Boston City Council. Up until this last term, the council's always been a majority white. It's usually been majority men. It's been usually been majority white Irish Catholic. And that's just the way it has been since the 70s, if not the 60s, when the Irish came into power in the city of Boston. So this is a new dynamic shift. It might not be like where you come from if you come from Baltimore or Washington, D.C., or towns that have a larger black population, and therefore the representatives look more like you. This is different. So you're seeing this, and you're seeing. Hopefully, more people will run for office. But when I talked about it in the opening, when you see all this divisiveness from someone that's been in public office, it's something that you really have to be ready for. And the women on the panel spoke about it earlier. Even if you're not going to be in the front lines, we have a role to play to defend and support people. And that means sometimes trolling the trolls on Twitter. Sometimes that means making a donation to the campaign, foregoing that dinner that you were going to spend that night and putting it in someone's campaign bucket. There are several ways that we can be more supportive of elected officials and also create our own civic power by making that connection and keeping those relationships. So I'm hoping that that's what continues to come out of processes like redistricting. But again, it's an insider's game. I would like it to be something that people are having town halls on, that we don't wait till the 10th year to trigger that conversation. I mean, we can have 10 years to plan for the next one. Let's not wait till the 9th year and then say, okay, we got to get the same people together and figure it out. And then there's a lawsuit. Like, let's get the troops trained now so that we're ready for war, because we know we've been at war our whole existence in this city since its inception.
Carlos, thank you. And I can't believe it's 8:30 already. So I'm going to sort of speed us up, but I want to give Kristen, Shakira, and Anthony any opportunity to add to anything more that we missed, or somewhat that Carlos said that sparked anything with you about the council. And then I want to ask anyone to jump in, sort of a lightning round with the council pieces. Let's highlight some good that may have come out the council. I know there's a recent thing that just happened. And so I'll just go through. Kristen, anything based on what Carlos just said?
I would just like to say that, that conversation about getting these conversations started a lot earlier, and not like, suddenly coming to the community when you have the need, coming to the community so that they are prepared for the need is something that we need to be doing just all the time anyways. And Carlos, I am wondering, is there someone who might be doing this or thinking about doing this, like with the practice census that happens in between our American Community Survey, which is a great way to get ready for the census. So I'm just saying that out loud because someone watching this will remind me that I said it so I can follow up on it later.
Listen, I'm trying to worry about educate the community. I didn't really know about the American Community Survey.
Oh, it's fantastic. You don't have to wait 10 years for updated data. Like there's some great check-ins there.
Anthony, when does the next report come out? She said data. I was like, ooh. Kara, anything to add with the Boston Poly piece?
I was just going to add that we need to really explicitly explore some broader structural elements in terms of what is necessitating the issues that we're having now. And how do we get here, right? And then also I want to piggyback on what Kristen said in terms of people need sustainable information to make informed decisions, right? We wait. We're waiting for when it's time when these campaigns start to meet these folks for the first time, to make this, quick, impulsive decision on who we're going to vote for and why, with just a short span of information about who they are and what they stand for and all those things. If we're informing our communities, around the year on what these issues are that we're facing and what could come if we don't address these things now, right? If we don't broaden the structural spectrum of what politics looks like in our city, we will continue to go into this rabbit hole of the same effects of the same issues over and over and over again, because we're not visiting things from a root cause analysis. And so when we talk about data and statistics, we have to really make sure that we're looking at root causes, even in politics, right? What is causing these upticks in terms of folks who are coming out to vote, and then all of a sudden, we're at the primaries and the folks are not coming to vote? Or why are folks voting for certain populations in terms of, what are you bringing to the table that is gravitating them towards your vote? And so we need to hear from our people in real time, and not just in the short span of when these elections are happening. I'll just add that and pass it back over to Anthony.
Anthony. You just wait a minute.
Yeah.
I just felt seeing in
Just add that.
He said, I'll pass it back over. Oh wow. Okay, I just got a little chills. Okay, go ahead, Anthony.
No, I honestly don't really have much to add. I feel like y'all covered it all really, really thoroughly. And I just all I want to say is like I'm a sick man, SIKH, not SICK. And part of my faith is that we have to, stand up against oppression. And so I just really appreciate that being said out loud, that, it's all of our responsibility to publicly stand up, do whatever we can to stand by all of these folks who are trying to do good work and who are being stopped by, or not stopped, but who are being delayed by all of these people who are just trying to keep the same old. So I just really appreciate y'all saying that.
I want to add really quickly that in 2017, the USDA stated that African Americans exceeded the poverty rates, right? And so if we look at 2017 and where we are today, we have far exceeded those numbers from 2017, only because COVID exposed the realities of what systematic oppressions we've been faced with. And not just Black and brown people, I'm talking about people of color across all sectors. And so again, if we don't have sustainable information, right? If we don't have that knowledge and education, we cannot make informed decisions about anything in terms of education, in terms of the places that we work, in terms of the communities that we live in terms of what we vote against and what we're voting for, why we vote at all. If we don't have information, we're going to continue to lose populations of folks whose votes matter. And we hear that their votes matter in September, but throughout the year, we're not seeing anything where we're showing them as to what the data and statistics says about why they matter. And so again, if we just keep leaving folks out of conversations, we will continue to see numbers either increase in terms of, poverty rates or other social determinants of health, or we just continue to hear people say, well, I'm not going to vote at all because my vote doesn't matter.
And Carlos, that's a good segue, because a little based on, say whatever you're going to say, and then can you add a little bit before we go off of Boston politics into, there is a level of responsibility or accountability that we as individuals, have as well. And so respond to Shakira, and then we can talk about.
I'm just more of it's more of an addendum, and I just want to name the issue. Like, as a former elected. I worked in the State House. I only had one legislative aide, but we had interns and we could bring them on in the summertime. And while we talked about and identified the hurdles to making progress as a body, there's not much in the way of our elected officials being able to speak to their community. And that's where I feel like all of our elected officials could do a much better job. Beyond the Twitter, beyond the Facebook, and you can have your own personality, but if you're not delivering pertinent information in a timely fashion. Coffee hours are not enough. You know what I mean? A town hall meeting once a quarter is not going to get it. If you're not going to go to door with flyers and information, to go into the same neighborhood associations that have been in power for the last 10, 20 years, it's not enough. You cannot keep doing the same thing and expect a different result. So until our electeds start to run full 2-year campaigns, where the 1 year they're trying to get elected and the other year they're telling you why we need more people to vote and how they get plugged into the system, and explain to them the budget, explain to them legislation, until we get to that. And until they decide to pool their resources and work together to educate the communities that have issues in common, we will continue to have this conversation. It's not even a new thing, right? Them asking us to vote in September and not hearing from them. I heard that when I was running for office 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And people were doing that 15 years before that. So we're a generation or two behind, and we're not really showing Generation Z and Alpha, whatever the letters are. I've lost track. I'm stuck in X. That what we're supposed to be doing. We're not laying out the ground rules for how we move forward as a people, and that's really disappointing. And I hold all of them accountable for that, because there's no obstacles for them to touch the people. None. Get out of City Hall, bring your staff with you, put your sneakers on, and call Anthony, get the data. You know where the voters are to find them when you're looking for their vote. So they got the money to do it too, and knock on the damn doors.
You don't even hear that term no more. Door knocking. You don't hear it as much as you used to.
we want them to come out in the community and be visible in the community. But if I could be the devil's advocate here, we also want them to be accountable to each other. And we want them to stop doing the backdoor politics in terms of you're doing the photo ops and you're showing us from the outside that you look as a collective, right? But then when we sit in spaces between, decision making of we're going to choose this person over this person, when you're doing the backdoor politics and you're shaming your fellow comrades in the same sector, that speaks volumes to folks who don't know about politics and how this works, right? And so now we're forced to make a decision. And so now we're not making a decision based on politics and what those policies would look like for us. We're making a decision based on war in terms of who can win this battle. And so we have to think about, again, the historical context of our voters. What's getting our attention and what's gravitating us to the people that we're voting for?
I agree. I think it's a two-way street. But I wouldn't even mind if you put a kick me sign on the back of the other counselor, as long as y'all gonna deliver a budget that makes schools safe and the streets safe. You know what I mean? Like, there's always gonna be that interplay. I believe there's always gonna be that interplay. But when you come out the house, right? We fight with our family in the living room, but when you come out of the house, you stand united for a common goal, and that's what you should be showing the community. And there's 12 or 13 of them now at the state and city level. You're telling me y'all can't form as a unit, y'all can't form like Voltron and figure out how to pressure the mayor, certain state officials to get budget lines delivered, and then come tell the community how you did it, ask them to do it with you. That part to me is so disingenuous that it pisses me off. But I'm gonna yield.
Here's a comment from Teresa. That part, Carlos, day of polling gives a false level of security or dismay. It makes voters think we got this, or we lost, or voters won't vote. And so two things I heard out of here that we might have to come back with this particular group, because I'm thinking about maybe doing this monthly, especially next year. Going to be interesting. And so we want to talk. I want to do a special segment on race and politics in Boston, because we didn't do a deep dive into that. And I think we really need to expose some things. Carlos, you mentioned the State House a couple of times. There are a combination of, you said 12 to 13. You were very instrumental some years ago as a state elected official. Let's just educate folks and tell them that the the Massachusetts Black and Latino caucus, technically by legislation, is really just the state officials of color. Correct, Carlos?
Correct.
And then what you did is, when you went in, you got with the other electeds of color within the Boston, and I probably open to others across the state or whatever. And so what you can speak to this coming together, because you actually sort of did it.
That's why it pisses me off.
I get it. Then, well, I know. But let's move into the state legislature. So we have Boston is very interesting, because most of the by city charter, and actually an amendment, I believe, Carlos, you're the historian here, or Anthony, Shakira, Kristen, jump in. But certain power was turned over to the state, because the Brahmins, the descendants of the Mayflower and whatnot, Beacon Hill folk higher up, did not like the fact that the Irish were coming. They were getting elected and voted into power. And so they shifted the power directly to the State House. Am I right there?
Yep.
There's a very interesting relationship between Boston and the State House. And so state legislators, state reps, and state senators legislate. They work around forming law. And so we're going to go into
and budget
for the state, also coming back to different municipalities. And so this time we're going to start with Shakira, the state legislature. Just the way she kind of looked up, I'm like, your overview, and I want to say this is in the context primarily of Boston state reps and state senators in 2022, and those, because Carlos, I think you or Darren or somebody had raised this a while, or maybe even Anthony on the show one day, that it's not just those of color. We got to hold those that aren't of color, that represent large districts and people that are of color, and even though they may not be. So Shakira, state legislature, state reps, state senators, thoughts?
I want to be nice.
Take your time, sister. Take your time.
You don't got to be nice to them.
I'm gonna. Well, so here's what I'll say. In terms of visibility, in terms of accountability, in terms of leadership, we need to know more of what your plan and agenda is, because I strongly believe that in terms of creating and implementing policy and legislation, right, you need subjective and objective components in doing that. And what the subjective is who we are, what we're feeling, what we're experiencing, and what these systems do to us. Your objectives is how you respond to what it is that we're experiencing as, constituents in your state and in your city. And so when we have more, and I'm just going to call it for what it is, when we have folks like Liz Miranda, who is in the trenches, if you will, with people in the community that she's grown up in, and she's sitting down with people who both look like her and who do not look like her, but she identifies because she's doing the work to understand the context of what we're all experiencing as a collective. We need more of that. And then on the flip side, we have people who might have an opinion because she's very visible, and so it kind of looks like there's a popularity game. And so when we change that narrative in terms of what's popular and what you're supposed to be doing, then we can have a better understanding of what these systems look like and how they operate. And so I'll say that, and hopefully I didn't say too much.
No.
Oh, that was well balanced. I like that.
I like
well
it.
balanced.
Wow.
Y'all, look at Anthony. Anthony's sitting there like Anthony, thoughts on the state house, state legislature? Anything to add to what Shakira said?
Yeah. So I, love Liz Miranda. I just want to give her a shout out real fast. I am super excited to see her in the state Senate. I'm super excited to see, Black Boston, Brown Boston, POC Boston get a solid representative in our state Senate. I'm so excited to see that finally for us. So, but I will say, I do think that what I always tell people is that if you want to get radicalized quickly, just pay basic attention to the Massachusetts state legislature. It's, it's incredibly toxic. It's, even though we get good folks like Liz, they're not given power because the people at the top who are in charge of the hierarchy of the state legislature, the speaker, the Senate president, folks like that don't want to see change. If they wanted it, they would have had it. We've gotten 85% veto-proof supermajority in the state house and a 90% veto-proof supermajority in the state Senate. We could have done all of these things if we wanted to. There's no reason we couldn't have. So I just always, I like to give the good folks props, but as a whole, I truly believe that the state legislature is broken, and I don't know what
all the systems are.
Well, that's true. Yes, that is very true.
Kristen, state legislature.
Man, like
just say y'all listen. Say what you
it's because we're tired. It's because we're all tired. Because we have had these questions over and over again. And we have all been with campaigns and worked for these outcomes over and over again. And everyone is just looking at us from the rest of the country all the time, being like, ooh, Massachusetts is doing something. And they do not understand that our federal array of superstars does not translate, and the support for that does not translate to the state level. And it's weird because it'll be like super hyper progressive, like federal, and then the state level will be like, no. And then you'll have the pockets of like really stronger progressive municipalities across Massachusetts. But the thing is, because the federal trickles down through the state to the cities, and the cities can't do hardly anything in this state, thank you, home rule, without the state involvement, everything comes to an absolute grinding halt the second it hits the full dome building. And part of it is honestly just because we are so addicted to our narrative, we don't want to actually do the work to fulfill it. This place is like being in Disneyland, but like a progressive political version where you have like Elizabeth Warren and Congresswoman Presley and Markey, and they get to play like Sleeping Beauty and the Prince and all of the good character roles. And everyone's like, I want to come and visit this amazing Wonderland and hear the story and be encouraged by it. And then you got like me and Anthony, and we sitting here slinging hot dogs at Casey's Corner, being like, yo, like, this isn't even real. This isn't even real. Like, what? We are sleeping in our cars. We cannot like afford food. Like, we can't do anything. But y'all are so addicted to coming here for the story that you love so much about awesome, progressive, we can have everything, we can do everything, Massachusetts. You don't realize that it's not real. It's fake. It's a fairy tale. And until we just, acknowledge that and the work that it will actually take to turn the fairy tale of progressive Massachusetts into the reality of a champion of progressive policy at the municipal, state, and federal level, we're not going to get forward. We're not going to get ahead.
But we got a Democrat for governor, so now things are going to change, right?
Do we? Just kidding.
I didn't say that one.
I'm sorry. I would also just like to throw in before we go, and I'm never allowed to even touch politics again, that this state is also kind of trash for being a Democrat, because being a Republican is so very vilified here that just moderate Republicans will just say that they're Democrats rather than have that label thrown on them. But their voting records sometimes are even more conservative than a Republican. And again, when we don't have this knowledge, when we don't have this data, when we're not faced with this reality constantly, it allows them to just absolutely slide and destroy our lives.
I mean, and even in 2021, Trump supporting anti-abortion Democrat got elected. So yeah, exactly. It's exactly like you said.
I want to be fair to Carlos on his fourth, because I know we're talking about the state house and he got a lot, but there's going to be Kristen.
Carlos ain't gonna say I'm wrong.
Wait a minute, no.
Carlos,
I want to take y'all off the cliff though. I'd like to take the car right off the cliff to close this segment out if we have the time.
Hold on, I heard
I can be quick.
Did you hear Kristen's little nudge to me before we get ready to go? We might be a little bit over 9, Kristen, but I'm going to
No. I'm not. I'm fine.
Kristen's not tired. She's turned up now. She's you done opened the
Catch me at D7 after this. Catch me at D7 tavern after this with all the feelings.
You see, she still got her earrings on. She's ready. She's going out.
Former state representative Carlos Enriquez, the Honorable Sir, Your Honor. State House.
So let me just affirm everything that everybody said prior. I think is absolutely right, and this might be really deeply concerning what I'm about to say to people, but I'm going to take you all the way off the cliff. So, shout out to Liz Miranda. Grew up in the same neighborhood with her. There are two, and I'm hoping I will speak to all the points that were mentioned earlier. There are 2 black women in the Senate. I think there are only 2 black people in the Senate, and even the 2 of them are not aligned in their issues. Right? They're distinctly different. So, and they're 2 out of 40, right? So that just gives you a sense of how much power they have or can wield as 2 out of 40. On the House side of things, it's 160 members. And in Boston specifically, we have this arrogance about, we think Massachusetts is Boston, right? We clown the other towns and so out of 160, the Speaker of the House really doesn't care about Boston. Boston stands alone as an island. The Speaker of the House, to maintain power, has to keep all these moderate and those Democrats that are really Republicans in the Midwest of the state and all the way out to the West, has to keep them happy and keep them in office to keep his supermajority or her supermajority. Usually a he, because it's patriarchal. The Senate president's a woman, but still it's very patriarchal. So the power never shifts the goal is not to be progressive. The system is not broken. It runs exactly as a patriarchal, misogynistic system should run. I have walked in. Now, you guys think that, well, not you guys, but the people listening think that legislators write bills and go and file a bill, and then it goes to the floor, and there's a debate about it, and then there's a vote about it. And that's not how it happens. It gets sent to committee. Usually doesn't even come out of a committee. If it does go to the floor, here's the most concerning thing I ever saw as a state rep. It was like my 3rd weekend. I walked in, I had all my papers, all the bills that we were going to be voting on that day. I had them highlighted. It was like my Bible. I'd
You did
highlighted
your work.
the scripture that I needed to go. And I looked around all the colleagues' desks, some that had been there for years before me that I looked up to, and no one had papers out on their desk. They were just sitting there chatting. It was like a nice coffee hour, cafe time. And then they were teasing me about it. What you doing with all these papers? Well, I might have to speak. I need to be able to quote this. All right, whatever. The board lights up for the vote, and like sheep, everybody looks up to see the board, and the Democrats wait for the speaker to vote and see if he votes yay or nay, and then everybody hits their button to match the speaker. That's your legislative process at the State House. And then the Republicans go, the speaker voted yay, we're going nay. The speaker voted nay, we're going yay. And they record the votes that they need to record. Sometimes they won't even have a recorded vote. They'll do a voice vote on the stuff that they want to sneak past. And this is the reason why I'm saying this to you is not to make you not like politics, but to Shakira's point, if we are not going to have the infrastructure in our local city politics like Boston, we're vastly unprepared to do it on the state level. If we can't get 13 to 16 elected officials in the Boston area to get together, how do you then work with Brockton, New Bedford, Lowell, Lawrence, Boston, Springfield, the few places where blacks and Latinos live to get anything done? You can't. And so you end up playing this retail show, like Shakira said, where you stand and look nice in public, and we got a caucus over here, but that caucus you don't know what bills that caucus is moving. They propose some bills, but you don't know if they're ever going to pass. They're going to ask for some money, but you don't know if they're going to get it. And it's just wash, rinse, and repeat. And the more times you do that to a Carlos Enriquez, to a Kristen Halbert, to an Anthony, we burn out and don't want no more parts of it. You got a shelf life of it. Kristen used to smile a lot more about politics. She wasn't using metaphors about slanging hot dogs on Casey's corner 10 years ago. They wearing her down. She done seen the bullshit so long. And I'm joking about it, but I'm dead ass, right? I'm serious about it on dogs.
I know. Dude, my first campaign was Sam Yoon against
See what I'm saying?
Like,
Bring
here.
team unity.
I've been here.
Right. So and if it's wearing down the operatives, those of us that are full of hope, what is it doing to the average voter time and time again? Who don't even get the information. And then they got to go to the circus and watch the circus go on, and they had to sneak into it's disrespectful. And so again, until we train and show discipline and train our people and organize our people and educate our people, and I really don't even think we're ready for that battle at the state level. There's some of us that can fight it, but if we can't get it together in our municipalities that I just named, those 6 that I just named, you ain't ready for the big show. And then forget about what Ayanna and Ed Markey and Elizabeth are doing. That you ain't ready for the big time. We barely on ward committees in the neighborhoods we live in.
If you can even get
I'm gonna chill.
No, you're good. I want to be sensitive to you all. So I have a goal of dead stop at 9:30. I got to go through a little bit of a speed round. Any response to the state legislature before we move on? We are going to talk about some state politics.
They trash.
I think we need to make sure that the folks who are watching, who are learning politics for the first time or gaining new information and knowledge and insight on which way they should go, or what more they need to learn about. I think we need to start to teach folks how to look at the differences between performance and outcomes. And so again, that speaks to the performative politics to get your vote. And then what those outcomes looks like, right? And for some of us who come from the places that we come from, are you willing to get in the trenches with us in terms of, we don't want you to just fight for racial equity. We want to make sure that we have access and equal access to what these things say before you get into office, right? And then also too, the performance and outcome. Your handshake matching your smile in terms of, can you really sustain that role that you're going after? Because if I'm going to be frank, right, we were concerned about Andrea Campbell when she was running for mayor, and we voted for her and we gave her flowers to her face, but when it was time to really make it happen, we didn't do it, and then we were ticked off when we saw the numbers. And then again, when she ran for Attorney General, we showed up and we showed out, and she's our first Black woman to sit in that seat. And so when we stop with this performative politics and really be about what it is that we say we're about in terms of reforming our systems, not just for Black and brown people, but for us as a collective in our city, then we will really start to make change and put people in those seats who can make those things happen. And we're going to see it with Andrea. I just wanted to put that out there.
Gotcha. Anthony, I know you said you want to jump in on the state piece as well. Oh, I thought you raised your hand. Okay.
No, I was just reacting.
That was the amen. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I really liked Carlos's thing about the board with all the votes.
All right.
And I really like the story about when the speaker voted no and then switched it to yes, and then everyone voted no and then switched it to yes. It's my favorite story about that.
And I will say, to Kristen's point, it's 2 points about progressive mass, and then we'll move on to the next thing we're going to talk about is sort of some of the issues, and we can go state and local. There was a chatter a while that progressive movements aren't really led by those that the movement claims, if they're successful, it'll have the most impact on. I mean, it's after dark, but I'm sincere the way that I said that. Basically, well, maybe not as sincere. There's an opinion about progressiveness that it's led by
white women,
majorly white women, and there is not. When Shakira talks about access and decisions being made, and so while I believe in the general concept of being progressive as a Black LGBT part of the community, and our first LGBT governor and all that, that's wonderful. But if you're not having all the folks at the table before the legislation, if it makes it out of committee, Carlos, we got to have that access. And so it may not be necessarily a bad thing that we haven't fully, and I get what you mean, Kristen, about some principles and policies from progressives, but that might be a whole nother topic in itself, because it's just, to everything Shakira said about Black women, me being a Black, you all being Black men and Black women, and it just that really left something with me around progressive, and no diss to the organization, but progressive Massachusetts. You know what I'm saying? So we can get ready to move on from the state if there's nothing left for that, because I really want to get into some issues and then make sure. Go ahead.
I want to throw one thing in, and it's so depressing, because on a very personal state level, I'm just so depressed by the progressive movement in the state, especially after being on Tanisha's campaign this year. And I can't even begin to look at the qualifications of that woman against Calvin. Like it
should we play the video? No, so go ahead.
But because Shakira brought up Andrea.
Yep.
I will say that one of the most weirdly positive moments that I've had working in the Boswell universe was seeing just the amount of white progressives that were just deeply annoyed and upset and like almost furious about other white people, other white progressives not showing up for Andrea. I saw so many posts and anger, and they were just like, what kind of progressive are you not showing up for this woman and I was like, whoa, now that's not a backlash I've seen very often from this group. And it was weird. And you saw those vote totals come out, and it showed that there was a significant portion of like the white population actually that was voting for Andrea, and they were very disappointed by the other part of the white population that was progressive, that they thought was going to vote for Andrea, that you were exactly right, gave lip service to, but once they were inside that booth, they made their own personal decision. And so I do want to say, like, especially just because of the amount of candidates of color that we've had in the last 2 years, in the last 2 cycles, it's kind of like the pandemic, where it is just opening some doors and shining some light on the realities of the situations, that even if you are putting back like the largest amount of candidates of color, most qualified in these like ridiculous terms that we use to qualify people, it still doesn't actually matter because of the lip service aspect. And now we're starting to see people react to that.
That's one of the points I was bringing up about the whole progressive thing. And it's a general sort of statement, but are we really, who's progressing, and then who's driving the progress? I want to move us into sort of some of the issues, and I'm just going to go because when I'm tired, and I'm not going to random do them and keep to the list. But all right, very, very ongoing issue, goes back 25, 30 years. It's also, I will name where I think after the anti-vax and anti-mask was the motive, anti-mask and anti-vax kind of went away, and then they joined themselves to this issue of mass and cast, where we've seen some of the xenophobia and just racist, and I'm not going to stay there, but just that's where I really, when the mayor had to move her press conference into 1010, which is a whole nother conversation about BPD and who should have and how that, because if that was Walsh, well, first let's back up. If that was Menino, and if that was Walsh, that would have looked very differently. So getting back to focus, mass and cast, I think the last person I started with was Shakira. So Anthony, mass and cast, city, municipal perspective, state perspective, or all inclusive?
I mean, I definitely think it needs to be all inclusive. I think every solution around mass and cast needs to be considered. I mean, it's terrible to see the way that our government at every level has just forgotten these folks. And I know it's a really controversial issue, but I really do think like issues like safe consumption sites, stuff like that need to be really, really considered when talking about how to address mass and cast, because at the end of the day, they save lives. There are people that are dying there, and we need to consider how to preserve human life. So, yeah.
Got you. Kristen, mass and cast.
Like a complete and total heartbreaker, honestly. I mean, this debate had been happening so long ago about the bridge.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I can't believe that we're still, I can't believe that we're still here, honestly. I mean, it's wild. And it's not even just, it's also because it's regional. It's not just a Boston problem. Like the way that the surrounding communities have reacted to our absolutely valid ask half the time to take care of their own residents.
That's right. Yep.
Is absolutely wild. And this is really what it means where Boston is like on an island, and it really does it feels like I should get a t-shirt that just says everybody versus Boston, but everybody is literally just the rest of the state. It should be Commonwealth versus Boston. It should be like the t-shirts that I start making.
Oh my God.
Because that's what it feels, especially with mass and cast. Like there's a bunch of things, but especially with mass and cast, because there is no way that like a 1 mile radius of our city should be taking care of a statewide issue like this. There is no way. And there have been some successes, and there's been some serious missteps, but at the end of the day, I just cannot put it completely on any of the actual sitting Boston electeds, because this needs a regional approach, and the region is being ridiculous. I need the Governor elect Healy to step in. I need Lieutenant Governor Driscoll to step in. I need some high level support to make the rest of these little districts around us straighten up and do some cleaning up.
I have some commentary, but for time's sake, Rep, mass and cast.
I'm gonna come with the gloom and doom on this one. So, I guess where I would start is that the state. I don't have much hope around anything changing at mass and cast anytime soon. The issue was something that when I was a rep in 2010, myself, Senator Jack Hart at the time, and then State Rep Nick Collins tried to bring attention to it. I think on a human level, we all fail as humans because we've been trying to trained in this society to ignore homeless and drug addicted and think that they've made a mistake in life and they deserve what's happening to them. Whether we do it consciously or subconsciously, I think that's the root of the issue. And then on the city level, I remember having a conversation with then Mayor Walsh about when the problem was happening in about 2014, and asked him to try to think of some solutions when I had his phone number and could pick up the phone and talk to him. And the recovery mayor said to me, well, we're going to keep the lights on at the park, and hopefully that'll deter heroin addicts from using. So, that's that's a real story. So if I got that from the recovery mayor, and then we also elected a mayor who sat on the council while this continued to brew and never spoke about it as a city councilor. Councilor Michelle Wu, as an at-large councilor, was not vocal about mass and cast, sat and watched it like the rest of the city council did as it bubbled up. So now we take it to a state level. You're going to have the same problems at the state level, because why wouldn't they want to dump their problems on a municipality they think can handle it or should handle it? Because the truth, in the state house, there's a lot of anti-Boston sentiments. There is a Commonwealth versus Boston. They joke about it openly. They'll tell you, oh, Boston gets everything. They get the transportation budget for the T. They get this and they get that. And they actively work against the 18 to 20 people that represent Boston. So I don't expect the state, unless the governor comes in and does the right thing, I don't expect anything to happen. Even when you bring the Royals back in, they just push it back. It's only back 3 blocks. It ain't clean. It's just back 3 blocks, and the street sweepers are out. So
they literally
I don't
had
see
them
much
in the
changing.
cut, Carlos. They had them.
Yeah, but that's where it extends back there anyway. If those of us that you've seen it on Mass and Cast, if you're taking the time to drive backwards to the T bus yard, it's always back there as well. It's never not been back there. They just come out and show up on the street and say, hey, if you don't get back there, you're going to get locked up and you won't be able to get your fix and you will detox in a jail cell. And that's pretty scary to a heroin addict or someone that has enough hard time in their life. So systematically, we're failing on all levels, personal, city council, mayoral, state, all the way up. And I don't see it changing, because it's not even just a regional, it's a national thing. You have these areas in every major metropolitan and rural communities across the country. CNN just ain't going to talk about it.
I never really realized about that. Presumably the rural as well, but that's where I think in Massachusetts, those that are in that area, that either it's not available, or we got a name that some people in that, not to get deep into the topic of decentralization, but some people do come into South Station there for help, and then crossing the street, one person sees something and the dealer gets a hold of them and it's a wrap. And so there is a percentage that does come for the help that's available here. Shakira, Mass and Cast.
I think the real question is this a system vulnerability, or is this an individual vulnerability in terms of what has caused this problem? Have our systems in terms of mental health and substance use support and homelessness and all those things, has that been the precursor to where we are now in terms of folks having to retreat over at Mass and Cast, because we are known as the epicenter for opioid substance use, for excessive homelessness across all demographics, right? And so is this an issue of the system, or is this an individual issue in terms of the social determinants of health, or the health risk factors, or the systems or the policies that are in place that systematically, like Carlos said, put us in these predicaments where we're forced to live in these predicaments? And so that's where I'm at. The question is it the systems that are harming these folks, or are we going to lie with the fact that this is an individual choice to be in these predicaments?
So I would say immediately, and I know you're posing a question, I would say immediately, maybe the very, very, very first time it was presented to them, there was a choice to use, not knowing.
Be careful. Even that, it could be a reaction to trauma. People get things laced.
I was getting ready to say life circumstances. Because this ain't my wheelhouse. But I think the time I spent with Yahira and down there, and when we were, out there every week or whatever, and hearing the stories and seeing, I just want to talk about the difference between this, because the choice thing for me, okay, and I'm just talking semantics a little bit, Carlos. The very first time, for whatever circumstances, was there an actual maybe choice to use whatever? Maybe. But after that, we know what goes on in the brain and all of that, and in the addiction level. And so the notion, of the continued choice to live that lifestyle, to be in the cold, to be looked upon based on, you all said how society does and whatnot. I do not believe that anyone, as much as we believe that 1% in violence, is making a choice to stay. In this particular case, it would be very disheartening and a learning experience for me to learn that someone is making a choice to stay active in the. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Carlos.
but see, I hear what you're saying, but I just want, like, if you speak to someone that has been addicted, it is not, you can't even word it as a choice. Your brain
Yes,
is
yes,
rewired to the point
yes.
it's no longer a choice.
Yep.
So I would go all the way back to, we live in a country that's convinced us that this is the number one country in the world. We've grown up convinced that it's okay to have billionaires, and I would love to be a billionaire. Probably not going to happen unless I hit that lotto on the right day. But you can't have billionaires and not have what you have on Mass and Cass.
That's right. That's right.
You cannot. One has to cause the other. You cannot have it both ways. You can't say, we live in a capitalist society and it's the Wild West, or it's the jungle and the strongest survive. That means that the weak get left behind, and that's exactly what our society has trained us since we were little kids, and our parents before us and their parents before them. We've accepted this society. This is what comes with it.
Yeah.
And you can stop at all the little short stops of, yes, the doctors primed the market by overprescribing drugs, and yes, we went to war and the second largest producer of opium, and it came over cheaper and purer after that. But the things that force you, the poverty, the trauma, the one misstep that you make next to the edge that pushes you over that edge that you feel like you need to escape from, is from the pressure of that billionaire. To make that billionaire, that pressure had to be exerted downhill.
Yep. The system is what she referred to. And I want to be very, very careful. Carlos, I thank you for like driving the not even balance, the sensitivity to, because that, if I am not clearly articulating well, that and I know, again, you were posing a question when you asked choice versus system, and it's definitely, system and the individual impact varies, on the individuals. And so just to be sensitive to Anthony and Kristen, any thoughts there on Mass and Cass before we move on?
I hope that an elected is listening to that.
Exactly.
One or two,
Actually, you know what? That's a lie. I actually don't. I hope a policy director or a very influential legislative aide is listening to this, because I also know how all this stuff actually gets done.
Shout out to all the policy directors, legislative aides, advance, and those in the offices of state reps, city councilors, mayor's office, governors. And just while we're there, shout out to all the staffers at the State House that were working. I don't know what the status is, but I believe it was voted down at last I saw. Did they get to unionize at the State House?
I don't believe so.
I don't believe
so either. Martinez, but I don't believe so.
Okay. So just, we want to acknowledge them as well. Kristen, thank you for that. All right. The next issue, and I may shorten these to just maybe two. I will be and not go into what my, wheelhouse and major issue is, but if we could just talk, well, I will for 2 seconds, because similar to 2020 during the pandemic, when we were supposed to be on lockdown, we've went through these clusters of a lot of shootings, 2 14-year-olds. And so violence, I started last with, I think I'm starting with Anthony now. Yes. Violence.
No. You started with me last time.
Kristen, violence.
Oh yeah. Okay. That, first of all, I believe that we all chose violence when we decided to come onto the show tonight. Let's be reminded.
I come in peace.
Me too.
Oh yeah.
But you got to fight for it. But you got to fight for peace.
Fight for your
right.
Peace. Come on.
All right. On violence, like, first of all, I want to be just like very real. My mother moved here for college in the 80s, and the Boston that she saw walking around at night, I am thrilled that I am not in that. But I should not be where I am today right now either. Like, good Lord. And honestly, let's just be like very real about the fact that any loss of life is an absolute state of emergency and a tragedy.
Yes.
I will shout out Kevin Peterson, because it's true. Like, states of emergencies, they do something. They push the resources, they push the conversation, and the communities that I know, but the resources, Jimmy. But the resources.
Point taken. Thank
you. All right, let's just, we got to build these coalitions. to get these results. And if the result is building the coalition between, I do not care who, if it was Kevin Peterson and Elmo, I don't care, as long as it came to more resources for actually getting the community straight, because the only thing that people seem to want to give us is more policing. And the thing is, a well-resourced community is a safe community. Shout out Counselor Laura for that one. But yeah, a well-resourced community is a safe community. That's what safety is. Safety is knowing that your kids are going to a good school, that you're going to a good job, that you can actually put both dinner and breakfast the next day on that table. And when you don't have that security, we're getting outcomes like we are right now. We just lived through the pandemic, and we had some pretty like low rates of violence, but also we had some of the highest levels of support at both local and like government levels that we have ever had. And we saw some people like straight up thrive with support and be able to come out a little bit better. And then all the support is just like evaporated. And now suddenly, oh look, we back to crime. We back to gangbanging. Like the issues have come right back. Because you know why? It's not that the people changed, the resources went the fuck away.
And
bring back them resources. Bring down my crime rates.
I'm going to go straight
I choose Elmo for the record. I'll take Elmo over that other
I
guy.
am quickly going to Carlos.
I'll bring the gloom and doom. I think that I love the part about a resource community is a safe community. I do think we live in a violent world. I don't think people are inherently benevolent, right? So I think it's a choice. I think we need to learn about what's inside of us and then learn how to control it. That's the most control we have over anything in our lives is how we control ourselves. And so I'll pivot from that to one of my favorite speeches in the world is the Ballad of the Bullet. We have done ourselves outside of the system, even though we operate within it. Again, going back to the thinking in a battle format or war, we know we are at war with the people that started this country. Yep. We know that we assimilate to it to a certain degree, but when we start to take our money and our resources out of our communities and put it in their pocket time and time again, we fail to put our best foot forward to keep our own resources in our communities. When we become affluent and we move out of bad neighborhoods to a nicer neighborhood, now that doctor and that lawyer are no longer spending money in that same corner store where they were before.
Or being an example.
It deteriorates our community. And these are lessons that were given to us over 60 years ago, and we failed to apply them. And then yes, the government has a role to play to help with the resources because it's our tax money. But again, that part comes from educating and training people on how to maneuver in that system as well, controlling our own finances and our own resources, adding that, supplementing it with the government resources that we are due because of our tax dollars. It is an all-together game that we're not playing. And we talked quickly about progressives and we talk now about BIPOC. We have all these big tents, but we're not using best practice that we see. And I'm speaking to Black people, right? Descendants of freedmen. We are not using best practices that we've seen immigrant populations, whether it's the Irish, whether it's Dominicans, whether it's Haitians, whether it's West Indians. They understand that there is an economy that you can create in your family, in your neighborhood, in your city that starts first and bubbles out from there. So when you resource your community yourself and you keep your dollars in your community, you're more likely to be able to employ those boys who are shooting at each other. You're more likely to show them another path to be a business owner besides a meme on Facebook about getting an LLC. You actually can show them that there's 10 business owners on their block. So when we live it, then it will change. Until then, it'll continue to be rhetoric, and we'll keep asking and talking about upticks in violence and downticks. Yes, it's better than it was when I was 15. There was 151 murders in a year in Boston. But that's not going to make any mother that loses their son feel any better. So until we change as individuals and control ourselves and control our relation to violence and how we see it and how we see how we can address it, then I think we stay stuck in this cycle.
Thank you, Carlos. And I'm moving expeditiously. Mama Java just wants some clarity. I think she missed the point of.
If you ever see on the ballot,
the first person I could think. It was like literally the first person I could think of.
I think she's talking. She's asking Carlos, like, why did he say El Mama? I'll tell you later, Ma.
All right, I'll let you handle it. Because I'll reiterate the point if anybody's wondering.
No, because my mama's on After Dark, Ma. But I'll try to behave. Shakira,
okay.
Based on your point about root causes, I love what Carlos said, because you're speaking to a larger issue than our reaction.
Yeah.
I hate that Carlos, I don't think it's gloom and doom or massacre and violence. I think you're being authentic and just putting the truth there. It's the Bible says, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. The truth just being out there that you know it, you not sharing it. Ain't nobody else getting set free. It's the truth
the Quran,
that you know.
The Quran has a good verse on it too about doing something against injustice, unless it puts you in danger, but at least speaking it if you can't do something about it, and if you can't speak about it without putting yourself in danger, you at least have to think something about it. So yeah, a couple of good books have lessons.
See that agreement right there that just happened based on the stuff that you were talking about. All of us talking about
just trying to be inclusive. We talk about DEI. Exactly. I just want to be inclusive.
Thank you. Y'all know y'all talking to a backslidden preacher. So I'll shut up. Shakira. But let's just name, and you'll probably name this as well. Violence is not just youth, gun, retaliatory. So I set the stage for you there. Come on, sis.
I want to say something. This is a quote from the NAEYC, which is the National Association for the Education of Young Children. And they stated that children who begin life in safe relationships that are continuously responsive to their evolving needs are most likely to be reluctant or exposed reluctant to reach out and exposed to learn new behavior. And this is what, that primary education is about, teaching that independency in terms of safety. And so I think that we need to look at identifying effective primary and effective secondary interventions in terms of violence. And adding more policing is not an effective way, especially for Black and Brown communities. I think we also need to look at research evidence or research-based factors that give us more insight into what works in terms of policies and plans and procedures, and what populations are most vulnerable to those implementations, right? And so I think that we also need to take a look, and I'm just going to be very clear with this, from a community level. We need to take a look at the community-based organizations whose prime being is to prevent violence, right? We need to look at the performance and outcome of these entities and hold them accountable to what it is that they're presenting in our community. Because when we ask certain CBOs or certain individuals who either work in these spaces, collaborate with these spaces, what measures do you have that tells us that your system works? A lot of times we're hit with, they don't understand what we're asking. They're taking it as, we're coming at them in a sense of, we're saying it doesn't work. We just want to know what works and what keeps you going. What brings you the funding that you're receiving that says your program is minimizing the violence that are continuously happening in your population that you serve? We need to hold these folks accountable. We don't need to just have, meetings about what's happening in our city in terms of the violence. We need to have case control studies with these folks who are heading these CBO organizations and force them in rooms where they're collaborating as a collective, because this is a multifaceted issue. One organization is not going to make a difference with the amount of violence we're seeing in our city at all. And so until we come together as a collective, we will continue to do these things in silos. And what we know is when you work in silos, we see populations across our city where there's a drive in violence in Roxbury and not so much so in Brighton. And I'll leave it there. But we need to come together as a collective. And until we do that, we'll keep having conversations and keep having RIPs and keep holding candlelight vigils and saying that this needs to stop. But we're really not holding the folks accountable who are in spaces, who are saying to our elected officials, to our mayor, to our law enforcement, to our funders, that this works. Our system works. And so show us the proof is what I would like to say.
Oh God, I'm doing so good tonight. Anthony, violence.
So
I'm proud of me. Go ahead.
I love you, Jimmy.
Self-affirmation is the shit, right?
Right. Look at that positive internal glow coming off this man.
That's right.
Come on.
That's right.
That's me holding it in. But go ahead.
He's rocking too.
So I just wanna highlight something that you pointed out that you mentioned earlier. Violence is not just limited to interpersonal violence. It's not just limited to like black men fighting with each other, anything like that. And I think that in a similar vein of what we've all been saying here, the abandonment of our communities
That's right.
by our government is itself violence.
That's right.
The fact that this system is supposed to work for people, it's supposed to help people, and that instead it exploits people, it forces them even further down. It's violence. It's violence. It's people in power using their power to harm other people. So I think that really needs to be said. I think that people don't really view policy and lack of action as violence when they really should, because people die from that.
And that is the thing, Anthony, that where I'll be very honest and transparent, where I have morphed or changed into sort of now looking at the long-term sustainable, addressing the root causes of violence. You all know we need to know hollering off and calling folks out every time there was a shooting and whatnot. But as I think all of you said, it hasn't changed anything. And the other thing that someone taught me, which is a little disheartening, and it's no slight against our local or our mayor, but they stated facts, where in Chicago and Arkansas and whatnot, the numbers are at a point where more pressure can be applied that this really needs to be fixed. On a national level, do you know that Boston is cited for doing well? We're like number 1 or number 2. And I found this out from an organization that's out there with folks that will feel they have no other choice but to shoot. And so I was thinking earlier, Carlos, about this term when we were talking about mass and cast, and we really got to get to casting in 23.
It's such a false narrative, though. It's such a false narrative because it's not a per capita comparison.
And that's
compare Boston to.
Thank you. Oh, Carlos.
The ratio of the
comparison.
yes. The density of population, and that was raised in that conversation too. But by public surface perception, our numbers are not what they were, last year. Our numbers, and these are talking points that have went beyond personalities and administrations. This is always a consistent talking point. And so we're going to have to come back because it's 9:30. I want to be sensitive to y'all. And Anthony, we're going to get ready to get you out here. Y'all are shady in the private chat. And so
seriously, I was gonna say that.
Anthony was telling us that his phone was getting hot, and Kristen told him, "Don't touch the snow."
Here you go, putting it out there. Here you go, reading the transcripts of our private chat.
No, what's the point of a private chat if you gonna say everything I say?
This is after dark.
Anthony.
This is after dark, but no, I'm glad for that kind of sort of Black Joy moment that happened there, because that last subject was very heavy, mass and cast and violence. I want to set context as we get ready to talk about 2023. We want to name that we have a mayor. We talked about it in 2022. We have a new mayor. We want to shout out Governor-elect Maura Healey, who is getting inaugurated, I think, on January 5th, I believe. And so we not going
to
go
to Ticketmaster and get your seats.
I ain't going.
Hey, it's $25. Free if you're 12 and under.
Or don't.
Big specials.
It'll probably be on TV. They'll be streaming it. Save your money and spend it in a business in your community.
You can't. What's it called? I mean, come on. You can't.
You've been to one. You've been to them all. They're all the same. You stand up, you clap. You stop, sit down, you clap. You sit down, you clap again. The speech don't even be that good. You're still clapping.
But we going to Liz's. We're going to Liz's and
all. We absolutely going to Liz's.
Yeah. We'll celebrate Liz.
January 6th. Come on over.
Celebrate Liz.
I want to hurry up because Anthony, we want to get him straight, and then let's go into forecasting. So I'll shut up here and just say that on the point that I was struggling with earlier, I would be remiss if I was not my authentic self and said this. in the space of violence where there are people that are ascending in a manner that it's perceived by many that you're seizing an opportunity to sensationalize the depth and trauma the reason I didn't want to bring this subject up because it's yes. So,
well, there's several. You're talking about the ambulance chasers in Boston?
I'm talking about specifically Mr. Peterson. Fall back. And I'll just leave.
He's not the only one, though.
He's not the only one, but during that 14, and in speaking on behalf of a family that the family told him not to, there's some stuff in the background that in this platform, Carlos, sometimes the inbox and what you can't.
I feel you. You know who wouldn't do that though? Elmo wouldn't do that to a family.
Oh my God. It was just the first thing I could think of.
I'm just saying, that's why I go with Elmo before I go with that dude. Because
I could say Skeletor, you still gonna go with him before that dude.
Skeletor come up with a plan, Skeletor has a measurable plan, and he might not execute it, but at least he can articulate a measurable plan of his takeover. I take Cobra Commander, I take a whole slew of people before I take an elected official or the leader, self-appointed leader that can't admit what they don't know or steps into things where they're not working genuinely for the people. That is not the role of leadership.
The role of leadership, perfect segue. The role of leadership. Next year, we know we're going into a very interesting at-large and district council, city council race. I want to set this context by saying everything that we talked about tonight was talking from the frame of ensuring that there are those that move in this space in leadership in Boston and Mass Poly, namely mainly electeds. We're giving some feedback and opinion, but now we're talking about, if you all, as we talk about 23, talk from a lens of what we look for. We'll mention who we hear running.
Someone that can tickle, someone that's ticklish, furry red hand. No, I'm gonna chill.
Y'all. I'm telling you, my mother is going to text me talk about the whole Elmo thing. That was really funny. Who am I with? I think I
think Kristen's up.
Kristen started violence.
I started violence. Carlos, you up in here?
You're up for.
I've been acting verbally violent. I'm trying to chill out. I'm trying to cool down.
All right. We'll go to Anthony just in case he needs to drop off on this last subject because we want you to be safe. 2023, where with you can, because you are operative. So where with what you can. What are we hearing? We know that I heard a rumor about one candidate. I seen a launch of another candidate. The rumor I heard, they didn't come out and say they're running, so I'm not going to say their name. But we know that Joel, what is his last name? Richards has put it out there for District 3. It's Jesus. It's almost like Carlos, the Elmo and KP thing, because anybody, but not anybody, but Anthony, 2023. I'm going to shut up.
So, I'll keep some.
Anthony does not stutter.
Because what had happened was
Anthony does not stutter, sir.
That was the most what had happened was ever.
No, I think that 2023 is going to be really interesting. Obviously, Frank Baker's challenge. I'm going to be keeping an eye on it. But to be totally honest, I don't know. I think Baker's going to be hard to beat. I think it's going to take a really, really disciplined candidate.
Yeah.
I think that, I have no love for Frank Baker. Let me be very clear about that. I have very little love for any politicians, but definitely not Frank Baker. But his district is his district. He's been there for a really long time. They're very, very.
I need to be your anger translator right now. It's predominantly white. He grew up in the district. He has 12 brothers and sisters. Exactly. He's entrenched. It's hard to move him.
Exactly. He's deeply, deeply entrenched, and I don't have a lot of hope that he's going anywhere. We'll see, but it will take a very, very disciplined candidate. So we'll see if we get that.
A disciplined candidate and a candidate that will be able to extract the energy from the people through their policies that are going to get them out to vote. And then once we get
and a candidate who surrounds themselves with the right people. I would like to see that as well.
Mm-hmm. It's very
if that take that how you.
I wouldn't put smart money. I wouldn't put it on a challenger, but that's
Shakira.
Sometimes district seats are hard to.
They in all seriousness, they are. Even with his, I think he got a little. Did we add a little pepper to his district?
Yeah, but I mean,
not.
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
and
Baker has mad
also,
people of color that show up for him. Like, let's like also not forget Baker does have Black people in the pocket, Latino people in the pocket, Asian people in the pocket. He got his little coalition of peoples. We cannot ignore that part of his support base.
We can't ignore that, and we also can't ignore the fact that his challenger was just running in an entirely different district, while Frank Baker is an entrenched incumbent who is well known in his neighborhood.
And y'all know how we are in Boston. We'll say you ain't from here in a minute, and when it comes to a district race, we'll say that too. There, Shakira, 2023. Where you can, what you're hearing, opinion. What are you looking for in at-large candidates?
I'm going to pass on what I'm looking for candidates and all those things, because I'm always going to be committed to our people. And so what I'm looking for is folks like us who are in this room and folks who are chiming in and sharing in this conversation, is to make sure that we're spreading positivity in terms of effectively educating our people, and not just Black and brown people, on what our vote does and what happens when we don't vote, making sure that folks are educated year round and not just September through November, making sure that the things that we're voting for, we are actively fighting for, and activating, advocacy and education and campaigns from a community level, right, as a collective, so that we're working together as a collective. And so therefore, when it's time to vote, we show up in those numbers as a collective. So my hope is for the people, as opposed to this extravagant new candidacy that is going to be the thing that we are expecting.
Absolutely.
I'm so glad you're on tonight, Shakira. I'm so glad you're on.
And why is that?
Queen down here.
I mean, you just been dropping knowledge. I mean, as this old head say, been dropping science all night.
I'm telling you, this is it. I wish we had did longer, and I can't wait to be able to do these face to face. Imagine if we were sitting face to face.
Oh God, great.
This would be crazy. Kristen, 2023 hearing expectations. What are you looking for? What 2023?
So I agree with the rest on the chat that, it's really hard to go against an entrenched district counselor. Like that is a battle. And one of the other battles for that is, like, honestly, financial. Everyone, you have 8 days left, 9 days left, 9 days to get as much money as you can, up to $1,000, to one of these council candidates that you believe in, one of these incumbents that you believe in that is sitting on this council right now, because they are desperately going to need that money from you in 2023. But honestly, they need to get that first dollars in at 2022. So as a reminder, you have a limit of $1,000 by calendar year. So we are really coming down to the wire to make sure that we are sending them into literally half of the council going into their first re-election year. And we were so thrilled to get this council. Well, we need to show up and keep it. We need to show up with them dollars wherever we can. I can't tell you, even if you were signing up to give $10 a month, literally, y'all don't even know what that really, really does for a campaign, what that does for the candidate to see you.
That's 1,000 flyers
every single month.
That's 1,000 door hangers.
It shows. It takes time to design those flyers. It takes time to get them off to a printer, get to mail program out. And that's why early dollars are so key. And we are in the last 9 days of early dollars for them to be going into this race. Actually, so I just want to start that out, because I'm telling you, there is a district councilor right now that is sitting on $500,000 in their bank.
Mike?
A district counselor.
No,
I said
a district. Wait a minute, a district.
Frank, don't make me go to OCPF to look it up. Come on, just give us the name.
No, Frank got $80K, which is also just oh my gosh.
Interesting.
Thank you, dear brother. This is the one time that me and David are working together. You can show his thing now. Everyone,
bring in the other Halbert.
You know,
we know that. I thought he was gonna give us the name.
Yeah, I thought he had the name in there.
This, like no, okay, fine. It is the council president.
Oh yeah,
Eddie Flynn. Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
his cool $500,000. But you
South Boston knows how to play the game.
South Boston does know how to play.
That's
and our electeds have been working their fucking asses off trying to show up and fight all these ridiculous things in social and the things that are just like so ridiculous and distracting, so distracting to get attacked over and over and over again. And then to have to try to do your job with policy. And then you also get to the end of the year and you're just like, damn it, I needed to raise money. But I had all this stuff that I also had to do. And so, you know, I'm not saying that all of them have perfect records and it's like the only reason they don't have money, but I'm also saying like, y'all, like this was a really, really rough year for being like in your first term. Having your first term being redistricting.
Yep.
Yeah.
Half the council, your first term being redistricting.
Kristen,
pay attention.
That is real. And I thank you for that perspective because I think it was Shakira that talked about different strategies and ways of getting involved. And we named that, you know, being active in politics isn't just the campaign manager. There's all the other, not just the elected, but others. But I again, wouldn't be my authentic self to not share a thought I had that if the elected was engaging in the basic city services and the policy level at some point, we've all done it and we do it. You shift the conversation ethically, whatever ethics has to be done or whatever, or operative or something. We know how it goes. The operative says, hey, we got to make sure that we get this agenda across. There's a meeting on Wednesday at 6. I would venture to say that if that engagement was going on to which Carlos referred and all of us want and see, it might be a little bit easier to get 100 people to sign up for $5 a month. You know what I'm saying? Those small dollars. And so I just wanted to name that balance as well, but perfectly agreeing with you saying that those that are apt, other pundits like us, do what it is that we need to do to keep some of the incumbents in place. And I'll just make this.
And they're not all equal. I will also add that all the counselors are certainly not equal. All the first timers are certainly not equal. And like, I can't be sitting up here saying like, oh, Counselor Laura like wasn't showing up in her community. Dear God, no. Like she truly was. Yeah. And still and that's what I'm saying. Like no one can say that she's not showing up and dollars are not like a direct thing to this.
And to her credit, there's been one of her major policies is this, the flag, the flag of civilian flaggers, and that is huge because that has budget implications. And Carlos, I know you're sitting over there and you're ready, and I want to get y'all off because it's time.
I know Carlos is so ready.
No, because don't give these people. I gotta get ready to get out of here myself. Trying to get out of here by 10:30. Before we go, because I want Carlos to sort of wrap it up. Before we go, I just need to do a little quick plug not for the 7 people that's still here, but we'll be all right. I thank y'all for staying in here. We will be here tomorrow at 9 a.m. with Dr. Betancourt, and that's it. Carlos, 2023 in sort of an overall add to the end there, sort of context closing remarks.
I'm gonna follow the lead of Shakira. I think we have to talk about infrastructure. My only interest, I'm way beyond liking candidates. Like I appreciate some of the work that some of them do, but I'm not a fan in terms of, you know, just proximity to power or title. I've been there, seen it, done it. Whether it's chess, checkers, backgammon, jacks, whatever you're playing, if you don't know how the game is played, you can't play effectively. You have to follow someone else's lead. And so my only interest in why I'm on Java with Jimmy or, talking about politics is because our community doesn't know how to play the game. And until we, like we've been saying this whole show, Eddie Flynn sitting on 500,000, that means he's probably going to run for mayor against Michelle Wu in a couple of years. You know what I'm saying? But that's why I look at it. And if other people, if you're not thinking about the game in that manner, if you're not thinking that you have to fund people and that you're funding gives you standing, and it allows you to, the developers use it to build buildings where they make millions of dollars in your community, and they take away your power from your community boards by backing candidates. If you don't have that knowledge of the game, then you can't play, and you can't play at their level. And this is a very local level. I know people don't like politics, but it controls where the money goes,
Everything.
and where the energy goes. Everything goes through politics. They have their hand in everything. So either you're going to watch the game from the sidelines and complain that you don't like the way it's going, or you're going to learn the game. And it's not impossible to learn it. It starts by showing up at your community meetings. It starts by calling your city councilor, asking them, hey, I saw your flyer. You said you were going to work on this. I would like people to be trained to be the supervisors of the elected officials. You are hiring and firing elected officials. And you can't hire and fire somebody if you don't have a way to evaluate them, if you don't have a real process to evaluate them. It can't be on how many pictures you took, whether they came to your fundraiser or your cookout. If they said they were going to do X, Y, and Z, then figure out they at least did X and Y before you rehire them. I'd rather take an elected official who says, I don't know what I'm doing, I need your help, or I'm going to fight, but I'm only going to win 2 out of these 3 rounds. I might get knocked out in the 3rd round. Like, that honesty is lacking between us and the community. And we keep falling for this, I'm going to fight for you, I'm going to fight for you. Anyone can fight, and anyone can get knocked on their ass time and time again. We need some wins. So like Shakira mentioned earlier in the show, like, it has to be, what's your objective that you're going to show us in your first 6 months, in your first year, in your first term? What ordinances did you file? What budget amendments did you file? Did that come back to the district? Was that money that you piggybacked off someone else? Did you need me to call? When do I call to help back this up for you? When do I call Ed Flynn's office and say, that's the education that we're lacking. That's the infrastructure that we fail to build cycle after cycle. And we lose voters, and the population is shifting in Boston, not just in redistricting, but people can't afford it. So soon you will have more disenfranchised, less likely to be civically engaged, and all the social ills we've been talking about woven into this conversation will be exacerbated, and you'll see them rise more and more. And that's what I'd like that to change in 2023, and people stop looking for the shiny thing and actually get down to the nitty gritty of the details of this game we call politics or life.
When I mentioned what are you looking for in from a candidate, that is the meat. Maybe in the conditioning of the words, looking for from a candidate, but that is the meat of what do we want? How do we want them to move? Yeah. What do we want their priorities to be? And we set that. I'll just say that, Carlos, and some. I will also say that there have been opportunities presented to community to come in and get that information and sort of understanding of infrastructure and with life issues and whatnot. And I think, Carlos, when did we try to do that last? Was that 21 or 20? I think I think that was 20. I think it might have even been before that. But again, I think it's a leadership issue. I know that residents have a responsibility to learn it. But if you're getting paid and you have a staff and you have the knowledge, it's incumbent on you to use that knowledge and power and bring it back to the doors, especially if you know as a community we've been getting burned out before. So that part, any candidate can do that. I mean, even, Elmo's really good at articulating what he wants, even though he speaks about himself in third person. It's communicate with your people. Communicate with your people. Otherwise, I'm going to have to start an Elmo for 23 campaign for the Boston City Council.
Please don't, because it'll be that Pat Payaso thing. And it'll
Payaso Pesci, Payaso, who's Payaso?
Oh, the one who dressed as a clown.
Kevin McCrae.
The clown that ran. Yeah.
Oh, all right.
He was a millionaire developer before that, before he just changed his identity. So, but
that was when he ran for a Republican a couple of years ago or something.
Nah, before that.
He ran for city council.
Yeah, a few years ago.
And mayor.
Clown.
Yeah.
All the debates.
Oh, yes. Oh God. All right.
But we have some people that do that and don't dress up as a clown, but they still carry themselves the same way. So
I'm going to behave. I have never seen Carlos go.
I wasn't expecting you to throw that one in there. I was talking about candidates. I don't think he's ever run for office. But go ahead and have your moments.
I've been holding on.
Java with Jimmy.
I've been holding on to some stuff. It's 9:52. We wanted to get them originally out about 10. About 9. And thank you all so much. I believe that this is, and the funny thing is, when someone said something about watching, folks know the algorithms. And so if certain folks popped on now, we'd be able to see who was watching. So I can guarantee you these after views are going to be, folks are going to go and troll. But I appreciate all of you sacrificing your time, Anthony, especially you, with what you're, taking care of. And so I appreciate all of you. We're going to do this again. I would like this group to come again because we didn't really get a lot into the historical context of racism in Boston. We didn't talk a lot about education. And I think we need to do a deeper dive into the reality of why some folks don't vote and not just pass them off, and really, do some more education. So I appreciate all of you. Kristen, enjoy yourself at D7. Let me just check and make sure there's nothing else I need to divulge out of the private chat. All right. So, yes, Anthony, y'all get off of here. And I'm just messing, man. I'm just listen. I'm tired. I'm about to get real silly. But
I'm about to go
guys,
make a drink.
tomorrow morning.
I appreciate all of you.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
Great.
Appreciate you all.
Minute before y'all go. Hold on, one good plug here. Y'all
He's like you be deep in your pastor moment. I'm just gonna close. I got one more thing to say, and then you bring us right back in. Get around. I mean, damn. You gonna let us go? Let us go. The doors to Java with Jimmy are now. The cups are open. My cup overfloweth. Let's go.
I'm gonna splice this. This is gonna be a good meme. I appreciate it. Thank you all so much. And Shakira, thank you for being willing to come in with in this space first time like this and deal with us. But you listen, sis, I'm looking forward to more from you.
Oh,
yeah.
thank you so
hang
much.
with the
Thank
G.
you.
It was awesome.
Thank you.
All right, y'all. Good night, everybody.
Are you sure we can go now?
Yes, Carlos, y'all.
All right.
Good night, everybody.
I'm just going to leave studio. I'm just going to end the broadcast and we all move out of here.
Oh, we're going to hang in the after party. I'll hang in the green room.
I mean,
I gotta run.
I know Anthony gotta go because he got
cut the feed.